We are visiting this morning once again with a really cool guy that probably had a lot of blisters but doesn't anymore because they've turned into calluses. That's just my guess here this morning as we talk this morning with a really cool guy. And it's Jon Waterman. And we had him on when this book first came out, Atlas of the National Parks. We thought we'd have him back again because it's getting to a time when maybe people are starting to plan their summer trips, and why not one of our national parks? Jon, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure, and our conversation brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Jon, when we had you on before, everything was locked down. It was so difficult to do anything but look at the book and dream. We're getting to the point where we don't have to dream anymore, aren't we?
Yeah, and in the interim, the national parks have become more popular than ever before.
Yeah, and so this Atlas of the National Parks, it's a big, big, heavy book. As I said before, my mom used to say it took two men and a boy to lift it up, and all three of them get a hernia. Because this book is so big, so richly filled with all kinds of wonderful, wonderful pictures, maps. The park superlatives are tremendous. It's just a comprehensive book, and it took a lot of people to put this together. And it is available. People can get this at bookstores and obviously on Amazon and some of the other sites as well, correct?
Yes, it has been quite popular, and it's popular if only by virtue of our national parks being so loved.
Yeah, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous book, and it's a wonderful guide to our park rangers. You yourself, or our parks, I should say, you're yourself a former park ranger, and you take us through all 61 of these national parks, and 33 of them you get really, really inside of them. One of the things we should say up front is the national parks, they're very concerned for everybody's health, and so there are some COVID policies that are in effect at our national parks, correct?
Yeah, the parks have to be visited like you would visit any other public place with social distancing and masks at hand, but there are opportunities in all of these parks to leave the crowds far behind, too.
Yeah. Absolutely, and those things will be explained by anybody who is planning a trip. No one just drops in the car and goes. You plan these things, and people will be, and we're really looking forward to the opportunity to get out and get inside the parks. So take me inside the book, Jon. Since it came out and we talked with you last time about it, I'm sure not even you were acquainted with everything in this book, but it really is comprehensive, isn't it?
Yeah, and for me, it's a dream come true because I've always loved maps. So there are over 160 maps in the book. It is an atlas, after all. So it's a way to virtually visit the national parks. Moreover, to plan a trip to the park of your dream journey.
Yeah, it's just wonderful, and you've been in many of these parks. You've hiked them, and you've guided people through them. As you reopen the pages of this book and look through this wonderful guide, what are some of the outstanding things about it that maybe we didn't talk about before?
Well, I think that this is an opportunity. This book allows the reader to understand what makes each of these parks tick, because I'm taking the trouble and done the deep research to, explain, for instance, the super volcano that exists underneath Yellowstone National Park, or the wildlife populations you find in gates of the Arctic National Park and the furthest reaches of Alaska. So it's an opportunity to really to peel back the layers and see what makes these parks tick.
And you take a look at some of these parks and the various opportunities and explain very, very in-depth, for instance, about camping opportunities, about some of the quirks of a national park, some of the things that you might miss because it's a famous national park and everybody goes to this area, but here's another gem within this national park or that one. And so it's really, really a fascinating look, and it includes, of course, that National Geographic photography, which is so amazing.
Yeah. The I think that the perspectives, vary from a look under the earth to these aerial photographs that we have looking over with the bird's view down onto the park. And that's one of the great opportunities of working with the National Geographic is having access to not only the information, but the photography that readers will find in this book.
One of the interesting aspects of the book as well is the park superlatives for each of these national parks. And they tell us a wonderful history and something to look for each of these parks as well.
Yeah, whether it be the deepest lake, which is the Crater Lake National Park, at 1,943 feet deep. That's 1,943 feet deep. The bluest lake I've ever seen. Or the greatest tree on Earth, the largest tree now living, is in Sequoia National Park. It's 200. It's not the highest, but it's packed with 52,000 cubic feet, and it's one of the oldest trees on the planet at 2,700 years old and 37 feet across. I took my son there just a few months ago, and we walked around it in a state of wonder.
Yeah. Tell me about writing the text for some of these parks. They almost read like a love letter to the parks themselves. It's really wonderful, eloquent language that describes something that we really, I guess, should fall in love with as our national parks.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And that's what happens if you spend time in these parks. They're inspiring. If there's eloquent language, it's only because it's what the parks deserve. It's what they inspire us to feel inside of ourselves when we go and challenge ourselves or just stand in a state of awe beneath these spectacles of nature.
One of the interesting things about it as well is you describe in the book, or it is described in the book, the parks themselves, but then some of the human interactions, like the carriage road in the Acadia National Park, is just an amazing accomplishment of engineering, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's hard to describe. It's one of those places that I have to go see to understand the care with which they took to build these roads. It took 27 years to build the system of carriage roads, and they never intended for automobiles to drive them. They were more intended for horse-driven carriages, or people now walk and bicycle on these roads. The man that created that particular system of roads happened to be John D. Rockefeller, and he told the park superintendent that after all the time and money he spent on those roads, that the roads could have been constructed of diamonds. And that's in Acadia National Park in Maine, Acadia meaning literally heaven on earth.
Yeah. It is an amazing accomplishment, this book. There are 61 national parks. Do I have that number correct?
Well, you do in terms of the book itself, but since I've written the book, 2 new national parks have been added to the system, so there are now 63 national parks.
And you take us inside the 61 of them, and we get a wonderful journey through them. You, of course, for many, many years have been a part of the National Geographic Society. You're on the Expeditions Council. You received 3 grants, I should say, from the Expeditions Council, and you have spent your life outdoors in these parks and in other places around the world, and you've written many, many books. When you think about this particular book and the reaction that people gave to it when it first came out, this Atlas of the National Parks, I'm sure it's very gratifying to you that people took it, looked at the pictures, and then began to read it. But what stands out to you about some of the reactions that people have given to you about the book since its publication?
Well, I think the first remark I always get is this: it's not a lightweight book. It's nearly 7 pounds, And it's not a book that you can look through quickly. I think that's one of the joys of it for me, is that even having written and researched it, that I repeatedly can return to it. And there are just so many facts and figures within that it's the kind of thing that, like the parks themselves, you can revisit again and again.
Yeah, and you do when you pick up this amazing book. It is the Atlas of the National Parks. It is a National Geographic Society book, so you know that it's going to be wonderful. And Jon Waterman has joined us here this morning. So do the calluses ever heal up and toughen up over the wintertime? Are you good to get back out there in the spring?
Yeah, eventually they do heal up, but it's like riding a bicycle. Getting out there, you just have to get back on that bicycle again and again, and that's how I feel about the national parks. There's always more to explore, and this book is really, if anything, an inspiration to leave the coffee table and the book behind and get out there and explore.
Absolutely. Right now we can open it up and we can enjoy it, but then it's supposed to inspire us to get outside and visit the national parks. The Atlas of the National Parks. Jon Waterman, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
And take a hike. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160. 1160.